Applying for unemployment insurance, a guide.
Can you tell us why the UI program is so important to people?
People really rely on it. Losing your job's traumatic. And yeah, it's again a terrible tragedy at times because people go into these situations with a whole host of emotions. Not just the uncertainty that comes with losing your income, but often, the circumstances that precipitated that termination can be very trying.
Folks, we live in a society where people need money to pay their rent, to eat, to live. And so if folks are terminated from their employment, they are really put into a bind, whether it's paying rent or child support or other costs that are incurred in modern society. And so it's important to have a system in place whereby if folks are terminated through no fault of their own, or if they have to leave their employment for good cause, that we have a mechanism in place so that they can continue to live and pay the bills that are coming due.
What do people need to know before they apply for UI?
Well, it's important to make sure that you apply right away when you are either terminated or you leave your employment, because there are time periods, and if you don't apply when you're fired, then you may end up losing out on benefits that you otherwise would be entitled to. And then make sure that you're being honest with your representations in the application, because if you're not, then the Department of Labor can come back and say, well, you misrepresented the situation, and you can get charged with an overpayment. You can get, there are fraud allegations.
What is the process like signing up for UI?
It can be done either online or over the phone. And so you would go through and you'd indicate who you were working for, how long you worked for that person, and then the circumstances around the employment ending. The end date, if it was a voluntary quit, or if it was a termination, or if there was some other reason for the employment ending. And then you'd get that submitted. The Department of Labor would analyze it and make a determination as to whether or not you're eligible, and they send out a determination letter.
I believe that if they suspect that there's some disqualification, you'll have to do an interview. If you're denied, then you go to the hearing. You can request a hearing.
How long does the process typically take?
So I think there's a technical answer that shouldn't take too long, but my understanding is the Department of Labor is quite backed up in its ability to process these applications. So it should take several months, or has been taking several months.
This is somewhat just speculation on our part, but it seems that the Department of Labor has been dealing with some staffing issues, particularly in the wake of COVID. So that slowed everything down. So if you've applied for benefits and you haven't heard anything from the Department of Labor, the first thing to do would be to reach out to the telephone claims center. Reach out to them online through your online account with the Department of Labor if you have one. If you don't, call them and attempt to reach out to somebody at the telephone claims center that way. If you aren't able to get your question resolved through the telephone claims center, then the claimant advocate would be the second resource.
What are some of the barriers that people face to applying for UI?
I think the process can be a little bit confusing, and some of the terminology that's used isn't always as clear as it could be regarding if it's a voluntary quit or if it's a termination with cause. Sometimes that's not really the fault of the application, it's sort of the fault of just the situation, because it's not always cut and dry. And so I think it's important to document whatever happened with your employer. That way, if an issue does arise, then you can look back through your notes later on, or if you have a termination letter, make sure you keep it. That way you can show that to the hearing officer if it does become a situation where a hearing is necessary.
So often the way that the questions on the initial questionnaire that the claimants have to respond to in order to get benefits is the questions can be confusing. So to take but one example, did you leave your job due to lack of work? Right. Now, on one way of construing that question, the answer could be, well, yeah, I was fired, so of course there was no work left for me, right? But what they're really asking is if your job ended, and the way that question's phrased can be confusing for a lot a lot of people, because it's not obvious what that phrase "lack of work" means.
There's a variety of reasons why people are disqualified for it, such as the hearing that I had today, kind of a tragic situation in which the guy had good cause to leave his employment, but then was subsequently disqualified because he wasn't available to work. That problem arises fairly often. So, I mean, it's kind of an illusory benefit to be able to leave your employment with good cause, and then to be disqualified on a different ground.
When applications for UI are denied, how can applicants appeal?
They can appeal by either writing a letter, by appealing over the phone. They can call the Department of Labor and ask for a hearing.
The information to appeal is generally on the paperwork that they receive.
There is a certain time frame, I believe it's 30 days, that you have from the time that the determination is issued to make that request.
If you don't request the appeal within that amount of time, you have to explain why. We had that issue come up.
How does the appeals process work?
Well, the way that it works now is that the Department of Labor, as far as I understand it, will do an internal review of the situation, which can take anywhere from a few weeks up to a few months. Occasionally they'll overrule themselves, and you may get a favorable determination just from the internal review.
You'll get a notice of appeal, and you'll get the reason for the original decision. You'll also get a hearing packet. They can be quite lengthy. You can submit additional material that you think would be relevant to your case. The process between receiving the hearing packet and actually doing the hearing is a pretty quick turnaround. You can request legal assistance at that point after you receive the hearing packet. And then there's several options for appearing, including just calling in or appearing virtually through WebEx.
So the way the process works typically is the ALJ will be asking the initial questions. They'll be getting the baseline facts of what happened. And so they'll ask the employer why the person was discharged or if they left, when that happened. And then the ALJ will then ask the employee their version of the events.
The first thing the ALJ will do is try to get the facts straight. In this mock hearing, an employee was discharged for failing to provide a patient with the treatment they were prescribed. Let's see how this process plays out.
All right, sir. Can you state your name for the record again, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Riley Xian.
Did you work for this organization as a medical coordinator?
Yes, I did, Your Honor.
Was your start date August 7th of 2017?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what was the last date you worked?
February 13th, I believe, is the day that I was questioned by the employers, and that was the last day I worked.
Were you discharged by letter on the 27th?
That's correct.
The whole purpose of the hearing is to review the facts of the case, right? So it's the hearing and the questions that the administrative law judge is going to ask you during your hearing are all designed to get at that aim, to determine the facts of the matter so that the administrative law judge can make an informed decision that will either affirm the Department of Labor's original determination or overturn it. And so the best way to prepare for your hearing is to review the facts and to try to be as dispassionate and focused about those facts as you can be. Did you take a resident to the doctor?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what day did you take this resident to the doctor?
The resident with the UTI was taken to urgent care on Thursday, the 8th.
And were you the one that took her there?
Yes, I did.
Did you bring her back?
Yes, I did.
As a result of the nurse practitioner taking a look at this individual, was she given a prescription?
What I recall, Your Honor, is that the nurse practitioner said she would phone in a prescription. I also recall that urine sample was what we call dipstick tested and a sample sent to the lab. And the outcome of the laboratory testing on this urine sample would be key in determining the specific course of treatment.
So, all right, you just told me that they said they were going to phone in a prescription to the pharmacy. Is that correct? You weren't told to pick it up on the way back?
No, Your Honor. If I could further explain, sir, we had one individual, a medical technician named Lily Rice, with the time that I worked for Geary, picked up all of the medications, logged them into the system, and worked very closely with the RN to review orders to set up medication administration records. And all of these steps occurred prior to administering a prescription to a resident.
Was she working on the 8th?
Yes, she was.
All right. Prior to leaving that medical office, were you given anything?
I believe that we went to the front and were given a paper. Maybe we could call it a discharge summary. When I returned, Lily Rice and I looked over the summary together.
And what'd you do with that summary when you did get it back?
I followed an essential process that when the nurse was not physically in the office, the medical office, upon my return with the resident, I would place the materials from the appointment on her desk.
Did you notify any staff of the requirements of that summary?
Again, if I may, Your Honor, my duties as medical coordinator required me to be the eyes and ears of the RN, the registered nurse. My duty was to communicate to her and also to my fellow medical staff person, Lily Rice, the medical technician.
Was it your responsibility to go pick up that medication?
It was Lily's job description to pick up all the medication.
All right. Is there anything else you want to tell me as to why you're no longer working there?
I don't know what I would add, Your Honor.
If the employer has a representative, then the employer's representative is also allowed to ask questions of both the employer and of the claimant. If the claimant has a representative, then it works that way as well. They can also ask questions of the employer or of the employee. And sometimes the situation really becomes clear when the employer can't justify the discharge. So if they're not following through their own internal processes, and you can get them to admit to that on the record at a hearing, then more often than not, the judge will find in your client's favor.
Do you have any questions for this witness?
I do, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Did the director of nursing indicate to you what your job description was?
Simply to take residents to and from appointments and to handle some administrative tasks.
Did you attend an urgent care appointment with the resident on February 9th?
I did not attend an urgent care appointment with a resident or this resident.
What day did you attend the urgent care appointment with the resident in which she was prescribed a medication and cranberry juice?
The day that I took the resident to urgent care was February 8th.
And it's important to emphasize just how key that hearing packet is, because the hearing packet consists of all of the potential documents that can be considered as evidence at the hearing. So having that hearing packet with you, reviewing the hearing packet prior to your hearing is really going to be important.
Why is the discharge summary dated February 6th? And why is your handwritten note that you wrote after the appointment also dated February 6th?
All right, hang on. Don't answer that question.
Your Honor, will we have an opportunity to speak to these documents at a later time?
Yes, I'm planning on adjourning this. We're running over time anyway, so I'm going to adjourn this hearing.
The ALJ, the administrative law judge who's conducting the hearing, will ask all those questions. They'll get testimony from the employer and the employee, and then at the end they'll make a determination, which is independent from the initial determination. But they'll review all the evidence and they'll make a decision based on what they've heard at the hearing or any other evidence that was submitted, whether it's documents, that kind of thing. If you're not satisfied with that decision, you can appeal that as well. That one I think is 20 days, and that appeal process is pretty straightforward. It's a letter that you send in where you argue that you should be entitled to benefits for whatever the reason is that you're arguing, and then they will make a decision from there.
You know, there's been a delay in processing hearing requests of up to 3 months, we're finding on average. So if it takes a while to hear back from the Department of Labor, I know that can be really difficult, especially if income is an issue. But just so you know up front that, wait times of at least 3 months have been pretty common, although it looks like that's starting to change and they've started to speed up the process a little bit. So hopefully that continues.
Now, we'll talk about a real story with an interview from a claimant who applied for UI.
So just briefly to get started, can you tell us a little bit about your story with applying to unemployment insurance and talking a little bit about what happened, how you became unemployed, and just a little bit about your story?
I moved from New Jersey to here in 2020, and I applied at Elcor Nursing Home, and they hired me full-time. So I started out as the floor technician, but once I became the housekeeper, I'll be cleaning the rooms. We had a system a system that you have to do, and after you do that system, sometimes maybe the supervisor may come behind to check and see was this done or that done. I mean, for my age, being out there for 2 years, when I started, there was a lot of different people who was there. All of a sudden, all them people was gone. But I managed to stick in there. Even though I had a few issues, my issues basically was we had 3 new different supervisors. And the third person was the one that really threw me in a different mindset from working, because the third person, he wanted to keep his job and make himself look good. And he was going behind me taking pictures of some spots I might have missed out on and here or there. So after a while, they was tired. The new person had the old people where they had me in a bind. The bind was, am I going to tighten up on anything I might have missed? And being for real, I was tired. After 2 years, I was tired. So I kind of turned that down. So they let me go, and that's when I came here, and I got with Corey, and we filed for unemployment. So when they got to unemployment, they approved it, but they wouldn't release it. The LCOR people were saying that all the stuff that I did wrong, I didn't deserve the money. So we applied for that hearing with the judge. We had a hearing here on the phone with a judge. So the judge looking at these pictures of a spot on the table. They took a picture of that. Say, you look over there, it's a dust spot. They'll take a picture of that. And all these kind of pictures is what they sent to the Department of Labor, where they wouldn't give me any money until we had the hearing with the judge.
So I know that you started touching on a few different things, but can you talk about some problems that you ran into while applying or throughout your process?
The main problem with unemployment is when you're trying to get some money and trying to get in touch with somebody, that's going up against a brick wall. The number they give you, you call that number, and they might ask you a few questions, and then you won't hear no more. We won the hearing, and they sent paperwork to me to go to Career Center to look for jobs, but I just never got the info that they sent me to go to Career Center. Therefore, they had to stop the unemployment. And that's another part of unemployment. If they send you something to do, you have to do it. So when I did go there, they had me in the records to let them know, unemployment know, why I didn't go when they asked me. And like I said, I did not get the paperwork to go. So they read them, and then they said, okay, well, whatever money, they released the rest.
How much did you ultimately get back in back pay for the time that you actually qualified for benefits through to the hearing?
Yeah, after we had the hearing and the judge approved me, I got $5,000, and after I went through so many different changes, they gave me another $1,000. So that was $6,000 that I got from $22,000. Now, where the rest of it is, I have no idea.
So if someone was having issues with UI, where should they look for help?
Well, they can contact our office, Legal Assistance in Western New York, Our website is lawnewyork.org. If folks are eligible for our services, we will do an intake, and then we can discuss your situation. If you want full representation at that point, then we can have that conversation and decide from there if it would be one we can do or not.
What does LawNY do in addition to UI cases that people should know about?
So we assist folks in a wide variety of issues that low-income people experience. Personally, I do mostly landlord-tenant work and foreclosure prevention. We also have attorneys who provide assistance with applying for disability benefits, applying for public assistance. We have folks who assist with consumer issues, and then Corey and Nate help out with the unemployment cases.
So who can get assistance from Law New York?
You have to income qualify. You have to live within our service area. Those are our two biggest requirements.
A person can earn up to 125% of the federal poverty level. Actually, it can be up to 200% if there are expenses, like a rent payment. We can do spend downs. And then as long as you're in that income range, then we can assist without charge, and are happy to do it.
Thank you for watching. Look in the caption for a list of additional UI advocates and resources in New York State. This is a film by Jenna Lea and Xian of the ILR Ithaca Collab.